All right. So today we will be talking about how to use an improvised TnS entry, basically from the 5 minute. This is what it's based on. We're going to start from the 5 minute, and then we're going to basically just going to talk about how it actually can be useful. What we're going to do is we're going to back test really just any random setup. It looks like we get along. Okay, so this is perfect. So we have a 5 minute TnS long setup here. All we're looking to find, can the lower time frame tell us that this TnS play is going to start to work? And so for this, what we're looking for, 30-second IFEG is what we're looking for to confirm that the TnS play is starting to work. The first thing that you need to do is you need to mark out the TnS entry. So first you have to mark out the entry, then go to the 30-second. Why you have to mark out the entry first is because you have to be aware of where the entry actually is to then look for your inverse, because you don't want to take the inverse before it even gets tagged in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark this out as TnS entry, and then we're going to basically take the first inverse that we see here. And so it looks like this, if I zoom in here, this candle inverses it, and then you would have a stop something like 29 points. So for this, you're going to use the stop loss of the actual structure itself, which means you're putting your stop at whatever near swing low is there, and then you're going to target either the TnS TP or any internal highs that you see on the 30-second. One thing I forgot to mention, that this does require a bit of trading experience. This is kind of stepping away from like the fully automated mechanical process of TnS. This is purely for people who are trying to gauge a reaction off a 5 minute TnS to then go on something like a 30-second for like a confirmation setup to give you better odds of winning. And we're going to go over various examples of this. So right here we can see this inverse. It does happen, but then it doesn't really play out exactly. We kind of come back down. Remember, your stop would be on the swing low. Realistically, you'd probably move to break even here because once again, this is basically you're just looking at TnS from the lower time frame. And you're basically trading TnS from the 30-second. That's exactly what this is. That's all it is. You're just taking the first inverse that you see. You're not looking for a singular inverse like how exactly Dodgy trades it and everybody else. We're simply taking the very first inverse, and that's really the key. So I'm going to put that here in text as well. The reason why you need the first is because the entire point of this is you're gauging the reaction off the TnS entry. Basically, you want to see the entry be wicked into and then get a quick inverse quickly. So in this case, we get the TnS entry here. Within a couple candles, we get that inverse. We don't come up here, then drop back down, and then, go down for a while, then get the inverse. It's still relatively quick. Okay, that's the entire point of this. Now, I'm not sure where the TnS TP is. Let me just go back to see. Okay, so it looks like the TnS TP is way up here. And going back to 30-second, that would mean that this is your TnS TP. And truly, in terms of real liquidity, I'd probably be looking at something like this ITH here, but once again, this is for more advanced traders anyway, so maybe you would notice this, maybe you wouldn't. But there's really not a super obvious high here, except for maybe one way up there, but the TnS TP is there. And so using this modified entry, you could have moved to break even here, and then you've still just been holding, the play to get to the TP, and it looks like it got hit right there. So basically a winning example. Now let's go back to the 5 minute and see what happens after this. Now I kind of know what happens here because basically we tap the short, the long got TP, then we tap the short setup, and the short setup starts to work. Now let's actually see what happens from the 30-second perspective on the short to see if maybe we could have taken the 30-second inverse, and you can see it's there as well. Remember, the key is for it to be almost instant. So all I'm going to do, once again, what do you need for this? You need to mark out the TnS entry. That's it. We're going to mark out the TnS entry. Let me remove the other example. Okay. These two black lines represent the TnS entry. Okay. Now, since we have the entries marked, you can kind of see now, okay, there actually was an inverse right here on the 30-second. So technically speaking, you would have actually taken this short. There's a tiny little bullish gap that gets inverse there. And remember what I was saying, you would actually put your stop on the swing. So maybe this would actually be lost before it's a win. That's what we're here to basically just find out. Is it more reliable to use the 30-second inverse when engaging the reaction, or is it better just to still look at the 5 minute? Now, me personally, I wouldn't really consider this to be a real inverse because it's very tiny. Realistically, you want it to be a solid inverse. And like I said, yes, you do need experience for this. It's not something that I can just teach you right off the bat to know that this is the better inverse. But truly speaking, you maybe wouldn't want to take this one, or maybe simply just wait for something like this with bigger inverse. So we'll just say that you got stopped here before it ended up playing out. This is kind of too easy of an example because I know these plays actually won. The entire point of this is to find plays that we can't really remember, even plays that lost. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to some plays that actually end up failing and see how waiting for a reaction can actually save you, because maybe there's no 30-second inverse even there, or maybe there's a tiny one like what I was saying before, and maybe it's, it's just not there. So for example, this short setup, basically it looks like it gets ran through on the 5-minute. Let's see what that looks like on the 30-second. Remember, this is our TnS entry. There's not a single inverse back to the downside. Not a single one. And so this is why this is so useful, guys, because you can almost just wait for a 30-second inverse to know, okay, this TnS play is going to start working now. If you don't get that inverse within a couple candles, it's just not going to happen. You can see here, we just run straight through everything. And on the 5-minute, you would just simply be stuck in a trade that loses almost instantly. But on the 30-second, you can see, okay, it never even gave you a signal to even enter this yet because we never did get that inverse. And that's exactly why I'm explaining this, because it can be used this way to help gauge your entries better and to have really lock in more profits as well, because you can move to break even at any internal high or low you see on the 30-second. You can trim or trail even at these levels as well. So for this example, it didn't even give you any entry, which is perfect because this play ended up losing. You can see it got stopped out there. Since we kind of get the idea now that, okay, you want to take the inverse almost immediately after the entry, let's talk about why that is on the 5-minute. The reason why you want that inverse almost immediately on the lower time frame is because when TnS gets its entry, every single good TnS play that works, we wick off the entry. It's a wick. It's not a body candle close through it. It's a wick. Just for example, just so you can see, every single winning TnS play is like this, by the way. Every single one, we wick off the entry. That's how it's supposed to work. Whenever we actually close through it, like the body's closed through, it drastically decreases the chances of TnS working. Okay, and what this looks like when we wick off the entry like this, you can see the bodies of the candles hold the entry. We're wicking off of it. What it's going to look like on the 30-second is us getting that inverse. Okay, that's exactly why you want to see the inverse relatively quick. Now, in this example, this would be your TnS entry. We have one inverse right here. This one does get inversed. And remember, I was saying you would put your stop on the swing low, which is like right here for 25 points. That actually got stop ran, which means you would have taken a loss here if you had tried this method of waiting for the inverse off of it. There's no way around it. Okay, there are some times where we do double sweep the actual entry and then it still plays out. But it can still be useful. For example, say you're the type of person that's waiting for a manipulation leg. This right here is a very obvious manipulation leg. The second go around. Now, like I said, this purely is for people who are like more experienced in trading. Maybe you wouldn't take this one because okay, we didn't even get the SMR. We didn't even have it there. Maybe you could have waited for this one where it's a bit more obvious, like a V-shaped type of thing. But remember, guys, the idea is that you want to see the 5-minute wick off the TnS entry. That's the entire point. And even going back to this short setup here, you don't even have to use this. You can almost use it as a gauge to see if TnS is about to start working. That's the entire point. If there's a short entry here, all I'm going to do is mark up the entries. Remember what I said. The 30-second getting the inverse is your sign that TnS is going to start working. You have the choice to either enter off that 30-second inverse or watch it simply start to work, and then you can still take a play after that. What do I mean by that? You can simply watch the inverse here because maybe you're like, oh, I don't trust this one. And then you watch it get a double sweep. You're like, oh yeah, I'm glad I didn't take that. You can even wait till after the fact we get the SMR. But it's basically your sign that it's going to start to work. Okay, once you see it start to pop up here, you could say, okay, well, maybe I want to try a 2022 model, just a regular FVG entry. And then there you go. Basically, what I'm saying is TnS starts an entire buy or sell model every single time it works. Now, going back to the short entries here, remember there was a short. If you're on the 30-second here and you're looking to short this, where would your inverse be? You would want to see it go to the downside, right? Which means one of these two bullish gaps would have to start being inversed. That never happens. That's what I'm trying to say. Remember, You want it to be quickly off the TnS entry. These two black lines represent the TnS entry. Just remember, these two are the entries. We do not get the inverse back down. That right there is your sign. Okay, it's the chances of this short working are very, very slim because we never even got the sign that price even wanted to try to turn back around. That's why this trick is so powerful and so useful, because you can almost see when a TNS play is going to work or when it's going to fail now. And also keep in mind what I just said about the entries thing. Please do not let this go over your head. Every TNS entry is supposed to be a soup. TNS is a soup model, guys. Every single time it gets the entry, it's not supposed to close beneath. Once it closes beneath, that's when we play around. That's when it starts to fail. That's when it gets close to the stop loss. If you go back and look at the daily reviews and you look at all the little thumbnail pictures I put, almost every single one, we wick off the entry. When we wick off the entry, there's a 30-second inverse somewhere in there. Maybe the first one fails like this, but there's one in there, I promise you, because we can't reverse without it. Another thing you shouldn't let go of your head, TNS entries create lower time frame MMXMs. What does that mean? It means that whenever TNS gets an entry, it's going to start a lower time frame buy or sell model, depending on the direction of TNS. Once TNS gets its TP, for example, right here, this high was hit. This is the TNS TP. The TNS TP basically controls whether or not we're going to continue in that same direction, or if we're going to completely reverse and get a new buy or sell model. And that's exactly the reason why I was telling you guys, you're going to want to hold if you see the TNS TP get closed through. You're going to want to hold a runner at that point, because that means that we're going to continue the buy model or sell model because we hit the TNS TP. That's just, it's like the low hanging fruit. Think of it like that. This is the bare minimum that we had to do for this 5-minute gap to be a working one. If we go past this TP, it means that we're going to start a full-on buy model up to this high, most likely. Now, it doesn't always happen that way, because this one I don't think made it there. But basically, the TP itself triggers us to start another sell model all the way back down. If we don't want to keep going past it, it's going to trigger a sell model back right where we started. And that's pretty much what happened here, I think. Yeah. Any questions about what we're talking about right now, though? Would you use 15-second on the 1 minute? Yes, you could, but the thing is the 15-second is a bit less reliable. What I mean by that is that you can't really just trust a 15-second because it's too insignificant. The reason why the 5-minute and 30-second is so good is because the 5-minute is a higher time frame. The 30-second is a lower time frame, but it's not too low. Okay, the 1 minute you're already on a lower time frame. Then you go to a 15-second, that's a bit too low to where even if you get that inverse, it could still just be insignificant. So that's why the 30-second would be better. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because for the 1 minute, what I recommend, if you're using the 1 minute TNS and you want to go to a lower time frame, go from the 1 minute TNS entry and then take a 30-second OB off of that. That's what I recommend. Instead of a 15-second inverse, take a 30-second OB off a 1 minute entry, because that works a little bit better. The reason why the 30-second inverse specifically works better for the 5-minute is because the inverse confirms that we're ready to push in that direction from the 5-minute entry. I've noticed that whenever we get a 30-second OB off the TNS 5-minute entry, it doesn't work too well. Sometimes they get stopped. They get stopped a lot, even if you get the OB. The inverse, though, seems to have a bit better result because it seems like that's when we're really, really ready to go. But let's just see this, for example. This is a version 1 long. So we got the TNS entry here. Let's go down to the 30-second and see what we see. It looks like we tapped into this TNS entry. We did pump up a little bit, but we didn't get the inverse. We then drop down again and we get a big bearish FVG. Now this would be a very nice inverse if we got it, because it's right alongside the TNS entry. So this would be our TNS TP. Let's see if we get the inverse back up. Still no inverse. Okay, we got it there. Now, let's ask ourselves, is this quick? Not exactly, but we did get the inverse. So let's just try it. You get the inverse there, you put your stop about 11 points there. Let's see. Looks like it fails. The reason why I asked that in the beginning, was it quick? That's the most important part about this, guys. It has to be quick. You do not want to see it come down like this and then slow up, not inverse it when we come back here. You don't want to see it slow up even when we get the inverse. It has to be quick. Since we're not taking the traditional inverse, we still need one thing on our side, speed. We're taking the first inverse that we see, but it has to be still speed. If there's no speed behind it, that's the one thing we absolutely need to have. We just have to have speed. Okay, there's no speed here. That's what's missing. That's why it ended up failing. Now, once again, this is for experienced traders. If you feel like you're uncomfortable trying this, don't try it. It's that simple. You have to have a bit of trading knowledge to use this. Actually, let me double check that even did it even stop out TNS? Does it play out? No, it got stopped. And once again, on the 30-second, we're not even worried about everything that happens after this because we want the inverse immediately. Why do we want it immediately? Because we want it to wick off the TNS entry. Now, you can see here, we did not wick off the TNS entry. We only wicked off it about right here. That's not what you want. That's not at all what you want. That's not what we're looking for, okay? Remember, the entire point of this is because you're capitalizing off when the 5-minute actually respects the TNS entry. The best TNS trades are when we actually respect the entry. Once again, do not let it go over your head, please. So let's stop for a second and answer some questions. Would you use a close through on which entry if there are two? That's a great question, Jules. Truly, you could wait for a reaction on both. Say the higher entry gives you a reaction, you take the inverse. You can be in off the higher entry if it gives you the actual reaction, like on the 30-second. But sometimes we'll run through that first entry to get to the second one. Then the second one gives us the reaction. For example, this one right here. Now, of course, in hindsight, we know that the short ended up playing out here. The long also won, but that's exactly what we're going to look at. The higher entry got ran through, but the lower one even it did win. Now, let's see what that looks like on the 30-second. I'm just going to pause it right there, and we're going to see what this looks like. You can see the first time we tap that higher entry is right here. There is not a single even gap here to be inverse. Nothing there, which means that's kind of your sign to say, okay, well, we don't even have an inverse yet. Maybe it's not going to play out. Here, we get what could be our inverse for when we tap into this. So now you're just patiently waiting for the TNS, the lower entry to get tagged in, and then you can take this inverse once we get it. Let's see. Okay, look what happens. We dump straight through the TNS entry, not a single inverse. What does that tell you? It tells you, okay, I don't want to get in yet. This lower entry could still work. And it does end up working, but we don't get that inverse right off the entry. I'm going to sit and wait. And then we start to pump up. Now, is this what we're looking for? Yes or no? So the answer is no. Remember, guys, the entire point of this is it has to be quick. If we dump first, that's time being wasted on us dumping first. Look at that. It's 4 minutes, which means, or 6 minutes really. That amount of time that it's taking, that means the 5-minute is actually printing through our entry. Remember, please remember this part. It has to wick off the entry. If it doesn't wick off the entry, it's going to look like this and you won't get the inverse super quick. The entire point of this, it should have been looking like something like this, where we tap the entry here, maybe dip down 2 candles, and then immediately pop right back up to get this inverse. Yes, we did end up popping back up, but it wasn't immediately after tapping this entry. It's supposed to look like the TNS entry is almost like a soup level on the lower time frame. That's exactly what this is, guys. That's what TNS is. That's what it is at its core. But remember, guys, this is exactly why we're doing this class, because you may be thinking like, okay, this still looks good, but only because you know the 5-minute work. That's why you guys are saying that. But truly, it's kind of hindsight. We've already gone over the example in the chat. But truly speaking, on the 30-second, there's nothing telling you, okay, we're getting that strong reaction off the actual 5-minute entry. The entire point of this, guys, is for you to capitalize off the initial tap of the entry. It's not to get in when we have just normal price action for the TNS working. That's what I'm saying. We need the inverse almost immediately. Okay, we need it almost immediately. So now actually let me go back and find you guys the examples from the chat so you can see what an actual good example looks like. And so I can show you like how when it works, we quickly get the inverse. It's not slow at all. So this would be our example here. Notice how as soon as we get the TNS entry, as it gets tagged in, we immediately get the 30-second inverse. We don't hesitate at all, okay? This means that it's almost guaranteed to be a 5-minute wick. That's the entire point of this. This play on the 5-minute did end up coming all the way back and stopping it out. But you can see what happens first. We get the 30-second inverse and then we hit that internal low. That is how you can still profit even if TNS loses using this method of waiting for a reaction, because this is an ITO, clear as day that there's liquidity there. It's also a little bit beneath 50%. But the bottom line is that you can actually take profit here for 33 points. And then it comes back to stop TNS. Where on TNS, sure, you can get a snipe and then maybe lock in 33 to 37 points. But it still comes back if you're just purely trading TNS. That's why this is so useful, guys. And we're going to keep going for more examples. Okay, something like this. Okay, this is the 30-second. You can see we tap the TNS entry here. Even though this is not the biggest inverse, even though the structure itself is not a great reversal, we still get that inverse immediately. As soon as we tap the entry, you can see even the bodies, of course, do close through it, but we're kind of respecting, like we're wicking off of it. Of course, there is an OB here. That's truly what we're wicking off of. But you can see it's still showing a slight reaction to the entry itself, and then we get an inverse immediately. Then we go to the TP. Now on the lower time frame, you can move to break even right here as soon as this high is taken. And then you catch a free trade for 22 points. Now, of course, it's not as much as TNS would have caught because TNS gets in a little bit lower. But once again, this is basically just opening the door for you to look at it a bit different or even just react off it differently. That's what the entire point of this is, guys. All right, you guys, that's going to wrap it up for this TNS class. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.